Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, editor-at-large, based in London, and I'm delighted to be talking here with a Thought Leaders special event in partnership with the Europas Awards. It's great to work with Thought Leader on this evening as part of Cambridge Tech Week, and I'm delighted to be joined now by Martina King, CEO of Featurespace. Round of applause. Martina is a bit of a legend. She's the former managing director of an AR pioneer called Erasma, former managing director of Yahoo Europe. So you are CEO of Featurespace, which is an enterprise financial crime prevention software, doing risk scoring events and preventing fraud. You've raised over £100 million now at this point. Clients include HSBC, WorldPay, NatWest Group, banks. The list of banks goes on and on. Obviously, all concerned about the issue of financial crime. And are you still president of the London Chamber of Commerce, or that you're still the president? You are. Wow. Okay. Great. So no pressure. Be careful what you say, Martina. You've seen a lot of tech companies, and I think what's interesting is that the sort of the topic of our conversation really here is, to some extent, a person about your journey, the company, of course, but also how it's related to this the idea of spinning out of the university, very appropriately here in Cambridge. Do you want to give us the skinny version of Featurespace's story today?
Featurespace. I was introduced to Featurespace by Mike Lynch. I was working with him at
famously of Autonomy.
Autonomy, exactly. And I'd come out of Autonomy with him, and Tamara and I were working at Erasma. And he said to me, I'm going to introduce you to a lifelong friend of mine, a gentleman called Professor Bill Fitzgerald, and his PhD student, Dave Excel. They've invented a fundamental technology. I'm going to take the kind of basic genius of it, and I'm going to point that at cybersecurity, and that's how we get Darktrace. Martina, go and work with the other guys and see what you can do. So I met Dave and Bill.
So no pressure.
No pressure. Exactly. So it doesn't matter how big you get. You've always got this enormous god of a kind of commercial genius that makes you think, oh, you're always just so small in comparison. But I met Bill and Dave, and I just thought they were really amazing individuals. And if my commercial experience could help launch a great technology and find our way in the world, what a great thing to be able to do. How exciting would that be? And so we went off and worked together. It was anomaly detection. Bill was head of signal processing and applied statistics at Cambridge, a fellow of Christ College. I didn't go to university. So I came from, I'm 62, so I came from an era when women, 7% of women at that stage went to university. We went to work. And so later in life, to be involved with the university, and Bill would ring me up and I was at my desk and say, you in Cambridge today? Yes, come over to the college. And that feeling of being in those hallowed rooms and being part of what is so special about Cambridge was just unbelievable. We started then bringing people into the college, so potential customers, anyone that we thought would love to come and be part of this thing that was this magic dust that's Cambridge University. And it worked. We hadn't quite found our product market fit at that time. And during that period of time, Bill was diagnosed with a brain tumour. And, you can read every business book in the world, but not very much prepares you for the day when somebody says, I'm just not going to make it. So I went to see him at the local hospice, and he said to me, Martina, can you help me make my company as commercially successful as I have been academically? And he had been one of the top 5 experts in machine learning in the world. Okay, Bill, we'll have a crack at that. So it's not just all those usual missions and values that you have to create for every company, but we made that man a promise. And he gave us something incredibly valuable in return, and that was for academics to give them the permission to be as commercial as we could possibly be. And that, I think, was very special for us, because it meant that every day when we came to work, we weren't just trying to build a great technology, we were trying to build a great commercial company too. And so it's 10 years later. There's a lot of research into how long it takes to be able to build a great technology company, and the answer is 10 years. And I just wish I could say that there was a shortcut, or that there was a magic bullet that we could all take, or a pill, or that just all of a sudden you wake up one morning. Those stories of companies that just come along and get whipped up, and it's all huge amounts of money, they're so rare. And unfortunately, I haven't found a shortcut to just graft. We had somebody come to work with us on a contract some time ago, and he said to me, the thing about you and your company, Martina, is it's just really gritty. I was thinking, that sounds like an insult. And I went off and had a thing about it, and it's actually, do you know what, we are? And that's what you have to be. You have to be scrappy, and you have to be gritty, and you have to be prepared to do everything. I was talking to Rebecca, who used to work for us for 6 years. We were up, kind of all working through the night. Rebecca would write something, I'd then be reviewing it, and then we kind of go, that doesn't sound right. I love the thing about the voice, the authentic voice. There was a guy who worked for us who was really well known when we got our product market fit, Luke Reynolds, comes from Essex. Everybody loves him. You go to an event with him, everyone knows him, and he just sort of, the crowds all just want to talk to him because he's just so popular. He's got the best Essex accent you've ever heard. So when we were writing things, do we write them in our voice or do we write them in Luke's voice? Well, we wrote them in Luke's voice because everybody loves him. So, even though we're Cambridge and we're smart, we still had to make sure that we kept that true voice.
That's a lovely story. But obviously, out of that tragedy, you wanted to be true to that promise and create a great company. And quite clearly, you're cooking with gas right now, and looking pretty good. Was there, in contrast to previous experience in business that you'd had, was there anything different about taking that previously academic work and commercializing it?
Great question. One of my other jobs for many years was Capital Radio. I was the commercial director of Capital Radio and then the managing director of the London stations. And so a lot of that was talent management. So what I described when I went to Featurespace is it's still talent management, but it's different type of talent. And academic talent, you have to really concentrate on how to get that right and how to motivate it. And so we spent quite a long time trying to really get the nuances of that. What do I mean by it? An awful lot of academic people are shy, competitive, hugely competitive, but they might do that in a non-overt way. So how do you find out what they really think? How do you encourage them to say what they believe, what they really believe? Because that's a really tricky thing to do when someone is really shy and they don't want to. So our first value at Featurespace is to tell the truth and tell the truth kindly. And if you can't tell the truth kindly, just tell the truth. But even though that is such an important value, it's still unbelievably difficult to get many of our geniuses anyway to have the confidence to still speak the truth. So it isn't easy, but you have to really concentrate on it to try and make sure that everyone gets heard in their way. Mm. And then as you're scaling, you're relying on that skill of management to be passed through the organisation. And when you scale really quickly, you're promoting managers very quickly. And actually, to be a good manager takes a long time. It takes years of practice. And you have to be really interested in it as a subject matter to get good at it. So then the ability to continue to motivate starts to get a bit wobbly because you've got so many people that are learning their trade. And so there's a huge amount of effort that's gone into that. But even with that, it's that bit of it is one of the hardest parts.
And I should imagine, I don't want to go into it too deeply because I want to have a few other questions I want to get into. But I imagine over the pandemic that doing that management was created a whole new different set of problems, didn't it?
Oh, I found it so hard. Anyone find dealing through pandemic and getting people back at work better? Not one person. It's been really hard, hasn't it? I think getting through the pandemic actually was great in many respects. As long as you didn't lose people and people weren't really ill, because you had to really concentrate and everyone was all in it together. We had so much fun. We put on shows every week for our team members. I had to wear a different hat every time, and we had people from the team who were up performing, and so we found out all these incredible talents about people who work for us. Then we've gone into this awful hybrid working.
Yeah.
And it's just so difficult to be able to create that atmosphere that you want to create every day at work. And then when people are at home, cynicism creeps in, that if the managers aren't strong, good, they don't spot it, then that becomes infectious. And so you've got pockets of that going on. And so it's really hard to, if you don't see people every day and you can't kind of check their faces.
Yeah.
And if you have got people who aren't very good at checking faces anyway, that then is you've got a kind of catalogue of management challenges.
It's been definitely been an interesting time, has it not? But back to the sort of the spin out aspect. There's right now 2023. The government's supposedly very backing of technology industry. It's trying to kind of unlock a lot of value inside academia. With the phrase "spin out" is on everybody's lips now. In fact, I was reading in the FT, but there are teething problems. I was reading in the Financial Times about a court case where in Oxford they're suing a spin out for what they consider to be their rights over that company. So tell us a little bit about that interaction between the university and then accelerating out as a commercial company.
Yeah. I wasn't 100% sure, so I phoned Dave Excel, the original co-founder. So I got this story right for everybody this evening. What he said is that we were a consultancy inside. So if you're a consultancy, you don't have IP, so therefore you don't have to share it. So we didn't have to share our IP back with the university. The halo effect of the university was incredibly valuable to Featurespace, but we haven't had the challenges of a university
so the product
holding
came
IP.
Later.
Yes.
I see. So but obviously not everybody's got that advantage, do they?
No.
So what's your view on this whole new push for spin-outs?
My advice to the university would be, particularly at Cambridge, it doesn't need the money of these companies. It doesn't. Its assets are so deep and rich. Do what it's done for Featurespace. We have absolutely loved being part of the story, but don't own the IP.
So it's more like the halo effect.
Absolutely. And then, one of the challenges always for an entrepreneur is how much of your company do you give up? And if you start already with a university that's part of your cap table, that's actually a really challenging place for many of your investors that you're trying to attract. So my ask of the universities would be as generous as you can possibly be to the companies that are coming out.
There's a different culture in the States, isn't there, where effectively what they say is go off and become a billionaire and then become philanthropic back and there's a different culture there for that.
There is, but it works. Yeah. Look at the size of the company.
Would you like to see that culture
be
here applied here?
I don't think I think universities are absolutely the right place for them is to be able to create the talent to go and do that, to create great companies and to build. Cambridge is very good with the ecosystem and all the structure. So, if I think of our early stage investors, Cambridge Angels, Cambridge Network, totally brilliant seed investors, and then A-round investors for Featurespace. So we already have that network of great organisations and individuals to support us.
Right. We'll do a little bit of Q&A afterwards, but let me sort of tease a little bit more out of you. What advice would you give to... There are people obviously here who've connected perhaps with the Cambridge Tech ecosystem and perhaps the university. So what would you... If they have those kinds of links, do you think... What advice would you give them as technologists who want to spin out or founders? Would you advise them to leave their academic world and go and do the spin out, or first, or maybe benefit from that halo effect?
I think it depends on what you want. I mean, in the UK, there are an awful lot of people who say, I just love inventing. I'll leave the commercialising to others.
Yeah.
My view is we've got to get brilliant at the commercialising part of it. And it's not good enough for us to have such a weak technology sector. It's really bad. And I know the government's trying to do things to help us reverse that. But it is a big problem for our country. It's also a big problem for the public markets because the markets don't really understand the technology sector either. So we haven't been able to train people to give us the kind of support we need. As we know, when you're building technology, very often you do need to invest early stage before the returns come later. That isn't necessarily, it's so fundamental to software companies, it's not necessarily accepted in the UK public world. So, that short-termism of results doesn't necessarily drive the long-term value, and I think it puts people off wanting to go into the public market. So I'd say if you've got a brilliant idea, make sure you've got a great commercial person to work alongside you if you're the inventor of the technology, and just don't think you can do it all on your own. You've got to get a great team of people, and that team will evolve as the company changes and grows.
You're playing in quite a very competitive space with Featurespace. It's all about enterprise financial crime prevention, completely germane to the fintech world. Pretty much the plumbing of underlying plumbing for a lot of fintech. What sort of trends are you seeing in this market now? We were talking a little bit about thought leadership. Do you have any thought leadership about the subject? You can use the microphone.
Well, we spent a long time trying to work out our product market fit, and it probably took us 2 years. And it's an awful lot of trial and error. But once somebody said, point in the payments industry direction, you'll help revolutionize it, that's then when we really were able to go and learn, build our relationships, get fans, get those mavens who were the people who were prepared to take a risk, and then to help build your business that way. So we spend a great deal of time working with the payments industry. Of course, the trends are set global for digital transactions. We still get paid by our US customers. Most of them pay us by checks. So there's a huge amount of digital transformation around the world in some of the largest markets that's still taking place. So we know we've got years and years of being part of that ahead of us.
Amazing. Gosh, still paid by checks. That is still a particularly American thing,
well, actually, there is, if I could just, the thing is, very often when people are making disruptive technology, you think you've got to be so much better. Everything's got to be, to the gold standard. Actually, all you have to do is just do it a bit better than what's gone before. And that's what our market told us. Can you build a product that is better a bit than what's gone before, but do it with values that we really respect, which is we want to trust you. We want a company that we can genuinely partner with, and we don't want to give you a deal and then you go and sell yourselves too quickly. We want you to be around for a long time. So it's that, really, when you understand your market, you know that your technology needs to continue to be better, but not totally transformative.
Yeah. As an executive and a CEO now, obviously, you were previously in more in the media space to some extent, weren't you? And now, obviously, hardcore tech. Do you find there's different cultures that a different take on things that you've brought because of that background compared to your peers, say, in the technology industry?
Oh, I hope so.
Only ever done tech.
I hope so, because things like, when you're at Capital Radio or Guardian newspapers, where I was for 10 years, you're in a really creative industry. So bringing creativity to technology, which is already creative, but giving it that opportunity to meld a kind of genuine technology creativity with imaginative creativity, with the way in which you're then telling the story of the business and engaging with customers. I just think that is, a really good way of being able to progress. A good example of that would be when we first went into the payments industry. Every event we went to, we were taking a look at it's like everything was blue and grey. So it's like, how can we stand out cheaply? Because we don't want to be spending too much money on this. Well, we go right to the other end of the colour spectrum. Remember that, Rebecca? So we could go to these events, and just our pop of colour meant that we would be noticeable, and people did. It was like a kind of, wow, you're just so different. And it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to, but you just look at the market that you're trying to disrupt and then think about the ways that you can do that all the way around. We went to the gaming industry conference. We couldn't afford a stand at the time, so we got a double-decker bus and parked it outside and offered, kind of fun on the bus. So there's all sorts of things that you can do that will be just a little bit more creative than perhaps just sitting writing code.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of the double-decker bus. Is there a difference between a Capital Radio DJ? Is there an equivalent to the Capital Radio DJ that you might have met of old, and some of the characters you might meet in the technology industry? Are there any equivalents? The big-headed founder, the egotistical CTO, or the genius.
Look, some of the DJs would come off air and they kind of go, "How did I do? Was I marvellous?" You kind of go, "Yes, you were so good. Your fans out there." But of course, then you've got somebody who's writing code, and I can't really tell the quality of their code in that way, but I can see what they're building and what they're making, and therefore it's still the same. People still want to feel that sense of recognition, and it doesn't matter whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. It's still finding the moment to be able to recognise the individual for the difference that they bring every day. But when people hide away, and when you can't see them, or if their manager isn't quite as interested in bringing that bit of motivation to somebody, you have to work twice as hard then to try and find them.
Well, a round of applause for Martina just now. Anyone? Let's do it. Let's do 5 minutes or so of Q&A. If everyone any questions for Martina about talking about long experience and different industries? Yeah. We've got one here from Tamara. I'm going to give you.
Just a quick question, Martin. When you started Featurespace in the early days, the university story was, you called it halo effect. How do you use it now? How does it have a place now? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah. It absolutely has a place then. There was a big customer, a big US payments company called TSYS, and they process on behalf of 120 banks around the world, one of the largest card processors. And if we could produce a card score that had been better than what's gone before, which we could, then it would be a really important deal for us. The guys flew over, they came in, we were able to take them to the university, they came into our offices in the Brewers building. It really made the biggest difference because they knew they were buying a company that was very smart. And they didn't buy us, they bought our technology, so they're buying really smart technology. That still works today. And when we go out and we tell people that we've come from Cambridge, when we had nothing, it was everything. Now we've got lots and lots of deals. It's probably less, we don't need to use it as often, but it's still our headquarters, and it's still where we get our huge amount of our talent. It's still where we have a huge amount of the innovation that takes place in the company. So it's still valuable, but as a business starts to gain momentum, the business then creates its own halo effect, so it's less necessary. But without it, I don't think we'd be here, obviously.
Any other questions? One here. Nick?
I love the name Featurespace for a company, by the way. It's fantastic. I had a question about finding product market fit with lots of academics, because that sort of changing direction can be off-putting for people that like to work for 6 years on their PhD, those kind of things. So I wonder if you had any thoughts on good ways to handle that process.
It's a really good question. So I think first thing is when you find your product market fit, it's a real eureka moment. When you know that you've started to build real momentum and a reputation for good starts to come through. And you can feel quite often people come back because they've been used to stretching. We've got to, spray out there in order to be able to try and find the thing. And then once you then find the thing, it's really difficult for people to say, well, we're still spraying. No, we're not. We're here now, and this is what we've absolutely got to focus on. And then once you start to scale and the process that we've been through has been our market, unfortunately, was on-prem. So we haven't been able to build straight to SaaS. We've had to build to serve the banks, and they're still on mainframes. And however, one thing that has happened with COVID is that they've been making their move to cloud quite quickly. So we've been going through that part of the transformation. And, where people have been used to saying, oh, well, we could win 8 to 10 big banks a year, actually now we're at the stage where we could be winning 80 to 100 big banks a year because we've been able to find a way to speed the technology. So then everything in the organisation's now got to go faster and to simplify. So we're now going through that as our next stretch. And there are some people that are finding that really difficult. All you can do is work on the basis of trying to ensure that everyone's on the same, your leadership team's all on the same program. And while we've been going through this stretch, I can tell you right now, I've had 1 or 2 that have been finding coming to this point really hard. I don't want to lose them. So it's like, well, we're just going to keep on at this until we get right out the other side. And I think we're there. And then you bring people in, probably from outside the company who've done it before, who can help really show everyone the way to go. And that's that gentleman over there on my right-hand side right now who's come to help us achieve that for us, Tim. So, but being, you question yourself on this. You kind of go, no, we've checked everything. This is absolutely the right thing to do. The world needs one of these right now. And we found a simple way for them to get it. And let's all get in there and do it together. And that just has taken, weeks and months of internal work, which you just have to do.
No shortcuts.
No shortcuts. No.
And
you can't send them a memo. You can't send them an email. You can't put a LinkedIn blog up. It's face to face, and it's grinding and grueling. And eventually, you watch people kind of go, "Oh, we're really doing it," because up until then, they sort of go, "Oh, well, we're not really going to change." It's like, and then all of a sudden, you watch individuals. The penny starts to drop. Oh wow, they're really serious about this. It's like, yeah, no, this is what we're doing. You on? Come on. So. I if you've got a faster or a quicker way or a different way of doing it, I'd love to learn.
Yeah. Well, if there's any consolation, I've met many a startup that took longer than 2 years to get to product market fit. So, but it clearly seems to be going in the right direction, and certainly look forward to hearing more from Featurespace. But for now, Martina King, CEO of Featurespace, thank you so much. And thank you so much to ThoughtLDR, and see you at the Europas.